understand.
I'll tell him you asked, though.
What if she need to sign? Please remain seated. Come to order. Court's now in session.
All right, we're on the record in the case of the People versus Julie Harper, case number SCN 308840. The record reflects the presence of both counsel. The defendant is present. The matter is set for the court today for purposes of probation hearing and sentencing, but the first matter we have to address is the defendant's motion that was filed requesting a new trial, and also in the alternative requesting that the second-degree murder conviction be reduced to a manslaughter. So we will handle that motion first. So Mr. Fink, do you want to be heard on that?
Your Honor has heard 2 trials, 4 closing arguments. He's heard the testimony more than most judges have an opportunity to do in any one case. And I know that Your Honor is intimately familiar with the legal standards in this case, having argued those both as a prosecutor and heard them as a judge. So to address the discretion of the court knows the arguments that I've made in the papers. The court understands the one-shot Derringer shooting under circumstances where there was a concession that there was, I think by all views of the evidence, a substantial argument that followed my client filing for divorce from her husband. So I'm not telling the court anything the court does not already know, but those facts seem to the defense to lend itself to the idea that this occurred during a sudden quarrel or upon the heat of passion, which would be manslaughter and obviously have a significant impact on Ms. Harper's sentencing. The shot that caused the death of her husband was a single entry, not in some place that would be consistent with an execution style type of killing, and it certainly followed a screaming match that was attested to by her children. So under those circumstances, we believe that there is compelling evidence, and we ask the court to, in recognition of that evidence, exercise his discretion in reweighing the evidence and taking a look at the evidence and reducing the charge to a manslaughter, or in the alternative, granting Ms. Harper a new trial.
Okay, thank you. Well, I've read through your moving papers, and the court does have discretion to grant a new trial in situations like this, and the court does have discretion to reduce the murder conviction to a voluntary manslaughter. In reading through the defense motion, the defendant argues that she's entitled to a new trial because the shooting occurred during a heated argument with her husband, and that there's claims that she had been repeatedly abused and raped throughout the marriage, and the court has to independently weigh and consider all the evidence that was received throughout the trial and determine whether it's sufficient to support the verdict of second-degree murder, and that's exactly what this court has done. The court has independently reviewed the evidence. I'd note that the only evidence that was presented to establish or support the heat of passion argument is the testimony of the defendant, and the court has to, when it independently weighs and considers the evidence, the court has to consider all the credible evidence and determine if the credible evidence supports the verdict. And I want to emphasize the word credible, because the defendant's story that she told from this witness stand lacks the most important element when it comes to sworn courtroom testimony, and that's the element of credibility. And the court listened carefully to the defendant's testimony and finds that the testimony of the defendant is inherently untrustworthy and not worthy of belief. And the court makes that finding for a number of reasons. There are many examples of the testimony that she gave up here on the stand that the court finds unbelievable, including the testimony that she buried the murder weapon in the ground in a hole near her father's office, and she said she did so to preserve the evidence for trial, despite the fact she had numerous other options available to her, including a safe deposit box. She could give it to her father. She could have put it in her house. She could have left it at her father's house. There are a number of things that she could have done with that gun if she was sincere in her testimony up here on the stand that she wanted to preserve it for trial. And what happened? She bails out a year later, and she goes back to the same spot where she claims she buried the gun, and the gun's gone. And the gun was not produced at trial through the actions of Mrs. Harper. And there's rampant speculation as to what happened to the murder weapon. I know Mr. Watanabe argued that perhaps she threw it in Miramar Lake. You could speculate that she threw it off the Coronado Bridge because her phone was pinging in Coronado. She could have thrown it in the ocean. She could have done something as simple as throw it in a dumpster somewhere. We'll never know. And only one person knows where the murder weapon is, and the court did not believe her when she said she buried it in the ground using some sort of beach toys or sand toys that she had in the back of her car. And I doubt that the jury believed her when she said she did that to preserve evidence. And there are a number of other examples, including the fact that she said she removed the batteries from the cell phones so they wouldn't leak. And there was no evidence to suggest that the batteries were leaking or anything. It's a more reasonable explanation that she removed the batteries from the cell phone so her location couldn't be tracked. The court did not believe her testimony on the stand when she said she either didn't hear the voice message or didn't remember whether she heard the message that was left by the victim's mother. And the victim's mother had some sort of incredible maternal instinct to sense that something was not right with her son, and she left him a voice message that was accessed while the phone, Jason Harper's phone, was in the area of La Costa Roasting Company. And the court feels all the evidence suggests that Mrs. Harper listened to that voice message and then sent out phantom text messages from Jason's phone saying that he was running errands and tell mom, well, I'll get the kids later and so forth. And the court doesn't believe that either. But most importantly, the testimony regarding what happened in the bedroom was key to the case. And there were two people in that bedroom, and only two people. And there's always two sides of the story, and is always the case, and often the case in homicides. We only hear from one side, because the other person who was present in that room was killed, and we couldn't hear from him as to what happened. But we heard from the defendant. And what did the defendant say? The defendant said that she armed herself with a gun. Not just any gun, but it was a gun that was loaded. The safety was off. She had her finger on the trigger. She was pointing it at Jason Harper. She had just filed for divorce. And she testified that she accidentally shot Jason Harper. The fact that she said she accidentally shot him and did not intend to pull the trigger when she had the gun pointing right at him, had the safety off, and was just in the initial process of filing for divorce, is another aspect of the defendant's testimony that the court finds inherently unbelievable. And the jury also agreed, because the jury made a finding specifically that she intentionally fired the gun. And obviously the jury did not believe the defendant's testimony that she fired the gun accidentally. And the court finds that that finding, that it was shot intentionally, is more than supported by the evidence, direct evidence and circumstantial evidence in the case. Now, we don't have to stop there, because if we look at her actions both before and after the killing, her actions also support the verdict as well, because she filed for divorce 4 or 5 days before the killing. She was methodically withdrawing money from the accounts using his credit card, large sums of money, $5,000 at a time. And when she filed her divorce papers, she failed to disclose any amount of abuse or rape, as she claimed here at trial. When she filed those papers, she was seeking custody of her children. She was seeking to have the house that she could live in. If there was ever a time to disclose, that would have been the time. No, she said she didn't do it because of his job and so forth. and then her notes in the journal referring to sex acts and not referring to rapes and other forcible sex acts. I think the jury probably found that hard to believe, as did the court. But then we also have another key element, is that if she truly shot him by accident, one would expect a reasonable reaction would be that she would at least try to render aid to Jason or call 911, and she did neither one. Instead, she piled debris and clothing and boxes and trash on top of his body and left him there to die on their bedroom floor. She also did other things, like she moved his car, although she denied that. His car was not in the driveway. But she took steps to make sure that nobody would go in the house and find the body. She entered through the guest gate because she probably assumed that if she used her clicker that it could be traced to her and her movement could be tracked. So these actions, both before and after the killing, certainly support the finding that it was a murder. And finally, stepping away from the facts and looking only at the law, the requested relief to reduce to a voluntary manslaughter is unsupported by the law, because to reduce a murder to manslaughter under a heat of passion theory, which is the claim, and was the claim at trial, the provocation must have caused a reasonable person of average disposition to act rashly. And a reasonable person of average disposition would not shoot their spouse over a heated argument, or we'd have a lot of killings that would be considered voluntary manslaughter, because spouses get in arguments sometimes. The court has independently weighed the credible evidence, and that credible evidence does not include the testimony of the defendant. And the court finds that there is more than enough evidence to support each element of second-degree murder beyond a reasonable doubt. Therefore, the motion for a new trial is denied. And for the same reasons, the motion to reduce the second-degree murder conviction to a voluntary manslaughter is also denied. All right, then, with respect to sentencing, Mr. Finks, any legal cause as to why sentencing cannot proceed at this time?
No.
Waive arraignment for purposes of sentencing?
We do.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Watanabe, on behalf of the people, before we get into that, I will say that the court has read and considered the people's sentencing brief that was filed on October 26th. The court has reviewed the probation report that was filed on October 28th. The court has reviewed the certification of records for the restitution hearing that was filed with the court on January 8th. The court has also received a number of letters just today that the court has reviewed. There are a number of letters on behalf of the defendant, and there are a number of letters on behalf of the victim's family. I've read all those letters, including a letter from Homer and Lena Harper. I have also read the heartbreaking letters that were written by Jackie and Jake, the children of the victim in this case. So I've read and considered all of those. So, Mr. Watanabe, I'll hear from the people.
Thank you, Your Honor. There are some family members that wish to be heard. One would like to speak live and in person. If you recall, Jason Harper's parents are Homer and Lina Harper, and Lina would like to come up and make her statement.
All right.
If I may have her step up to the lectern.
And I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name. I thought it was
That's
Lena,
all right.
but it's actually Lina.
Lots of other people do too.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Mrs. Harper, for being here today. I'm happy to hear from you. You can just take your time and tell me what you'd like me to understand about your son and your feelings about the case.
Okay, thank you very much, Your Honor. I'm Lina Harper, mother of Jason Scott Harper. Our son was murdered in the morning of August 7th, 2012, 3 years, 5 months ago, at the age of 39. He wanted to live and be a part of his children's lives as they grow up. He loved all 3 of them so very much. I thank the Deputy District Attorneys Keith Watanabe and Clayton Carr for their perseverance and hard work in trying this case. I thank the jury for arriving at the verdict, which brings justice to Jason. As Jason's mother, I miss him every single day. There is such a huge void in our lives because he is not here. His life was cut in half as he would have lived into his 80s. Jason was a devoted son, and we were proud of the man he had become. He was ethical, dedicated to his teaching and to the success of his students. He was easygoing, extremely patient, and very responsible. We saw him on a frequent basis, and we knew as we aged, we could count on him to help us. We no longer have Jason's help. Jason was a fantastic hands-on father. Every day I miss him as I watch his children, Jake, Jacqueline, and Josh, grow, develop, and succeed in school and their extracurricular activities. They were 8, 6, and 1 when their father was taken from them. They are now 12, 10, and 5, and they miss him very much. Jake and Jacqueline are going to teach their little brother the things that their dad taught them, so that he will experience what his dad would have taught him if Jason was still alive. Jason gave me a photo book titled Dreams Do Come True. Even though his dream turned into a nightmare, he continued to defend and make excuses for Julie, even into July of 2012. In his discussions of divorce, he never considered 100% custody for himself, because he wanted his children to have their mother in their lives. Julie Harper is a selfish, arrogant, and vile person. She threw away her children and made them orphans when she murdered their dad. She ended the life of a very good man. She deserves to bear the consequences of her crime, and she deserves to serve more than the remaining 14,000 plus days of the minimum sentence in prison. And that's what I had prepared for November, and I have to add to that at this point. We have just experienced our 4th Christmas without Jason, and we've celebrated 4 of Jason's birthdays without him. It still remains an especially emotional time for us without Jason. And I want to say a few things on behalf of his children, Jake, Jacqueline, and Josh. Jake and Jacqueline had postponed writing their impact statements because they want all of this to just be over, to be done with court. They are resilient, happy children who are doing well in school, sports, and other activities. However, children should never have to go through what they have experienced. As Jackie said, how does your own mother kill your own father? I wonder how you ever recover from this legacy. How do they answer the question when they're asked, where are your parents? Every time someone asks this question, they are reminded of how their dad died. Jake has said that he needs to protect me from her. There is the fear of their mother and her parents. There have been nightmares of Julie and John killing or stabbing Homer and me, of them being abducted by Julie or John, of Josh being abducted. Even last night there was another nightmare of being abducted. Strange noises alarm them. They don't want anything that reminds them of their mother. Josh, the 5-year-old, has told preschool friends that his mother killed his father with a gun, and one friend went home and asked his mother if they had guns in their home. The ripples of this horrible experience extend in so many directions. These children need to be safe from their own mother. She needs to be in prison until they are all adults so that they feel safe, so that they can put this behind them, and so they can move on in their lives in the most positive way as possible. These are wonderful and precious children. They need justice to be done. Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mrs. Harper. All right, Mr. Watanabe, do any other members of the family want to address the court?
Not directly, but they've asked me to read some statements just from the direct family members.
All
Your
right,
Honor.
go ahead.
Homer Harper is here. He's 84 years old, and he's asked me to read this statement. Jason and I had a wonderful and rich relationship during his short lifetime. Interactions encompassed athletics, working together, financial goals, politics, and everyday life. His first sports were t-ball and soccer. In his first year at t-ball, the coach awarded him the Rookie of the Year of the team after playing first base. His height and reactions provided valuable when he first started playing goalie in soccer. In the 6th grade, he started playing center in basketball. Around this time, he started doing work such as yard work and caring of dogs for vacationing families. Jason's good character was evident by his good work habits of doing work well and being responsible. In high school, Jason was good in academics, social activities, and sports. He had some very good new Vietnamese classmates. They and others spent special holiday dinners with our family. He worked 3 years as a parking valet at Hollywood Bowl. Basketball and volleyball were his chosen sport activities in high school. In his sophomore year at volleyball, their team won the Southern CIF Championship. League team honors were won in both sports, along with being team captain in both sports. Jason's club volleyball experiences led him to playing on UCLA's volleyball team. While at UCLA, they won 3 national NCAA volleyball championships. He pursued economics at UCLA and received a degree in economics. During the summers, when not in school, Jason worked with me at my apartments. Deferred maintenance included plumbing, electrical, carpenter, painting, and etc. were the daily work. Working with Jason allowed the discussion of many topics. Here the great character of Jason shined. When interfacing with tenants, you are exposed to many cultures and their feelings. Dealing with these situations is a real-life learning experience. These experiences were incorporated into his teaching, coaching, raising a family, and developing many friendships. Jason's children, Jake and Jackie, now ages 12 and 10, say they will each teach Josh, age 5, the important things their dad taught them. The last year of Jason's life was very troubling and stressful, and he was tirelessly trying to secure a better future life for the children and himself. His life was taken away in a cunning and deliberate way. No one should go unpunished for such an atrocious crime. Those are the words of Homer Harper. Next, I have a statement I was asked to read on behalf of Jason's younger brother, Brian. Your Honor, not a day goes by in which I do not think about my brother, and words can never express the suffering our family has endured since he was taken away. There will be no more surf sessions, watching March Madness basketball, golf outings, swimming with the kids, family dinners, and holiday celebrations to share. I wish I had the opportunity to tell Jason how much I love him and how lucky I feel to have had him as a brother. My parents lost a beloved son. My niece and nephews lost a loving father. I lost my only brother and biggest role model. My wife lost a caring brother-in-law, and my daughter will never get the chance to know her Uncle Jason. I would like to thank the District Attorney's Office and everyone involved in working on this case. Jason Harper was a great son, brother, and friend who loved his 3 children very much. As for the verdict, we are very grateful and hope it will bring us some closure. Thank you to all those who supported our family in our time of need. I have one statement from Jason's cousin, Barbara Kemmis, Kemmis. She was around the same age as Jason, and they were very close. As a side note, during the course of this litigation of this case and the 2 trials that this family had to go through, someone had to watch the Harper children while this trial was going on, and all of these witnesses from the family needed to be here. And it was Jason's cousin, Barbara. And this is her statement. I only met Julie Harper 3 times during her marriage to my cousin, Jason Harper. Each time she was intoxicated and drawing attention away from the event, marriage, holiday, etc., that were gathered to celebrate and were geared towards herself. I remember finding her selfish and obnoxious, but not dangerous. I was surprised that Jason married her, but not that he stood by her during her illness and drug abuse for the benefit of his children. He would clearly have given anything to protect his children. When Julie murdered Jason on August 7th, 2012, she shattered my family. She could have made 1,000 different choices that morning, but by killing him, hiding the crime, and hiding herself and the children for so long, she extended the horror of her actions and caused more damage. The choices she made after that moment were also consistently selfish and designed to inflict maximum pain. Conceiving a baby to lighten her sentence, lying about abuse, and ensuring those lies were recorded in the media was incomprehensible. These lies are now recorded for her children to see. Even though the jury, and ultimately the media, recognized her accusations of abuse as lies, her children will struggle with their impact on their memories of their father. I write this statement less for me and more for the impact I will see on Jason's children. They are remarkably resilient, and their placement with my family will ensure that they are deeply loved and receive the care and support they need. I am grateful every day to play a role in their lives and see the humor, intelligence, and other traits of their fathers in their faces. But they are effectively orphans directly because of the actions of their mother, and that pain is evident as well. Her neglect, drug abuse, and lies have impacted us all. As we pick up the pieces she shattered, our family has reformed it. It isn't the same shape as it was, but we will continue to love and care for each other and be grateful that she cannot hurt us further. Warehousing her in a jail cell will not erase her actions, but will physically remove her from our lives so that we can at last find some security. Jason's children deserve to grow up and find their way in life without further damage inflicted by Julie. Finally, as the court is well aware, Jason and Julie had 3 children. They were ages 8, 6, and 1.5 at the time. Quite a number of years has gone by. They're now ages 12, 10, and 5. The court met Jake and Jackie as they testified in this case, and they have written statements for this hearing. This is the statement of Jake, who is age 12. Hello, my name is Jake, and these are my thoughts and feelings on Julie Harper. To the reader, this is written of my own free will. Julie Harper has caused much pain and misery to all the members of the Harper family and extended to their friends. She murdered with no sense of the consequences, as leaving my siblings and I parentless. She had destroyed our lives and now will not accept the consequences. She did not realize that eventually she would go to jail, and now she is trying to weasel out of punishment. She will continue to lie and cheat people out of their justice. The suffering and pain we have endured that she caused should be answered with justice. She should serve out her time with no shortcuts. She should get no leniency on her sentence. Our voice must be heard and justice must succeed. Sincerely, Jake. This is a statement of Jacqueline, who is now 10 years old. My name is Jacqueline. I am writing this of my own free will and mind. I blame Julie Harper most definitely for the fact that my father is dead. Also, I want to say that I no longer have a mother because she was so selfish and self-centered. She wasn't thinking of caring about anyone except herself. She wasn't caring about my brothers, or I, or Grandma and Grandpa. Because you killed our dad, you are no longer Mom. You are Julie. I will never call you Mom again for what you did, and I don't want anyone else referring to you as our mom. You made my brothers, Grandma and Grandpa, and I suffer so much. We will never feel the same or be the same because you killed our father. You made my brothers and me orphans. My brothers and I loved our dad so much, and you stole that from us. We were never able to say goodbye to him. You made sure of that. I can't believe all the lies you said in court about my dad. He only wanted the best for us, and you betrayed him in the worst way by taking his life. I will miss him every day, but especially during the holidays and on our birthdays, and he will not be there to hold us close. I will miss playing poofy ball in the backyard and on the grass. I will miss going to the water park with him. Our lives will never be the same. Thank goodness for our father's parents who took us in. They are raising us the way our father would want us to be raised. There is no way that Julie Harper should get any special consideration when it comes to her sentence. She should get the maximum sentence for what she did to our father. If this does not happen, there is no justice for our father. I beg the court to give her the full prison time she deserves. I want to thank the court for letting me write this statement. Sincerely, Jackie. Those are all the victim statements that I have to read, Your Honor. I do have a few comments. I know the court is about to impose the mandatory sentence in this case, but I've had to live with this case over the course of over 3 years and have dealt with the litigation and working with the court, the staff, and defense counsel. So I wanted to start by thanking the court and your staff and defense counsel for all working very hard and playing your respective roles in this case, and I do appreciate examine them harshly, but I know that they never asked for any of these things to happen. I know that they were sucked into this case by Ms. Harper. And of course, as the court knows, her actions had a great effect on her children, as well as the parents and other family members of Jason Harper. Ms. Harper was a mother, but a mother is one who sacrifices herself for the sake of her children. And this mother did exactly the opposite. I do want to also acknowledge and note the Harper family. In dealing with murder cases, I've had to deal with a lot of family members, and of course it's a difficult time meeting with them, going through the difficult litigation that's required over the course of years in a murder trial. And I have never had a more supportive group of family members than the Harper family. I feel great sympathy for them because they have had to endure the vicious lies being told about Jason during the course of 2 trials in this courtroom. Jason Harper's family knows that he was not a rapist. They know that he wasn't abusing his children, and they know that he wasn't abusing his wife. Imagine how hard it would be for a family member to sit through these trials and listen to all of these lies being told while remaining composed in the courtroom and following the various rules that the court has. This family displayed extraordinary strength and self-control to endure these trials and these lies. They've had to watch her remain out of custody, living in the same house she killed Jason in, and enjoying her life, and then going on, as we later discovered, to get pregnant, be pregnant during the first trial, and then have a baby, all while knowing that Jason is dead and she's out there enjoying her life. The Harper children have had to endure the fear that their mother was free in public, and the fear that she would come and take them against their will. I most of all thank the Harper family for all of their support. So those are my thoughts in this case. I do ask the court to impose the mandatory sentence of 40 years, 15 years to life for second-degree murder, and the additional 25 years for the personal and intentional discharge of a firearm causing death. There are just some administrative matters that do need to be addressed. First of all, the State Victims of Crime Board has paid out victim restitution on behalf of the Harper family, which includes funeral and burial expenses, as well as counseling to the Harper children. This total is $10,143.60. I ask that that be paid to the State Victims of Crime and Government Claims Board. Additionally, I've asked that the contents of People's Exhibit 19, which is the blue backpack in this case, be present in the courtroom because there is one set of items that the Harper family is requesting back, and those are the passports of the 3 children. The family needs those passports in order to expedite applications for future passports, and they request the release only of those items. We're not asking for the rest of the contents of the backpack or anything else. So I thank the court for hearing from me.
All right, thank you. Mr. Finks?
May I just have a second?
Sure. While Mr. Finks is having discussion with his client, there are 4 passports, 2 for the defendant, 1 for Jake and 1 for Jackie. I'm assuming you just want the ones for Jake and Jackie, is that correct?
Yes, that's all.
All right, and they have expired, but it would would a photocopy of the passport suffice? Okay, we'll photocopy the identifying information, including the photograph.
May I just have a moment?
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. I just wanted to make sure they don't actually need the original. You know, there's a lot of bureaucracy in trying to obtain passports sometimes, but they believe a photocopy will suffice.
Okay, or we could just photocopy this and put it in the evidence. Let me check with Mr. Finks for just a moment.
That would probably be my preference. That way the family has the actual copy in case they run into problems with...
Before you start, Mr. Finks, is there any objection to just photocopying the passports, putting those in? It's actually People's 20, replacing the photocopy with the passports and returning the passports to the Harpers?
No.
Okay, all right, then we'll do that. So I'll just ask the Harpers to stick around after sentencing, and we can do that. Here you go. So just the 2. All right, Mr. Finks, on behalf of the defendant.
Yes, Your Honor. With respect to the restitution, Ms. Harper requests a restitution hearing.
Okay. All right.
At some time.
Well, we can do that. You want to do it? We'll make time for this. We could do it. Are you still in trial, Mr. Finks?
I am. I expect, Your Honor, closing arguments to end Wednesday or early Thursday.
Okay, we'll set this for a restitution hearing. Do we have a settlement conference on Friday morning? What time?
9:30.
Okay, we'll set this for a restitution hearing on Friday. 1 week from today, whatever day that is.
Yeah, 22nd, Your Honor.
Yes, at 9 o'clock. Okay, then with respect to sentencing, Mr. Pfingst?
If I just may have a second. Your Honor, Ms. Harper would like to address the court with respect to the case.
Okay, all right, Ms. Harper, what would you like the court to know?
Ms. Harper asked if she could have one of her hands uncuffed so she could flip the note pages that she has.
Well, that request was made informally by counsel. I know as Ms. Harper was being brought into the courtroom, she asked to be uncuffed, and I've left that to the discretion of the bailiff, who tells me that given her status as a green bander, that she cannot be unshackled while in the courtroom. So Mr. Finks can assist you and flip the pages for you as well. Is that correct, Deputy?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, go ahead, Ms. Harper. I'll hear from you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sorry. It's A, B, C, D. Another behind closed doors. My husband was a different man behind closed doors. I have no doubt, I make no case against him being a good son to his parents or anything else. But he was a very different man to me. And it has been so hard to go through all of this for the last 3.5+ years after what I went through with him for years and years. And I'm sorry if I couldn't articulate that well enough during the trial of everything I went through with him. But I was still, and I'm still recovering from everything he did to me all those years. And it's been so hard for me to talk about, and it's been so hard for it to be so public and in the media and on the internet. I never even had a social media account or anything like that. I was a very private person, and I tried to keep my children private and out of all of that. I am not guilty of the charge for which I'm here. I'm innocent of any criminal wrongdoing. My husband was abusive to me for years. It started many years before it got to the point of physical and sexual abuse, with verbal abuse and psychological abuse. But when I first came into my relationship with him, I was a very strong woman. I worked hard all my life since I was a little girl. I got all A's in school, other than in geometry and physics. Other than that, all the years, all A's, worked very hard. Spoke at my junior high graduation, was one of the valedictorians from my high school that I went back to after my freshman year of college, which I, as you heard during the trial, applied for the special program to go into after my junior year of high school. those years and sacrificed so much to someday be able to have a good career, to go to graduate school, to be able to support myself and to help support a future family. But my biggest dream, ever since I was very young, was to have a family, to have a husband that loved me, and to have children that I could love and that I could raise in a way where they felt unconditional love every day of their lives. I, like so many people, believed in the American dream. I never imagined that I would ever be charged with anything my whole life, let alone murder. I've never been arrested for anything my entire life. I have never had so much as a speeding ticket at any point in 42 years. The 39 years before this happened, the 2 years I was out on bail, there was never any incidents. There was never any incident during my 13 and a half months when I was in custody prior to bailing out. So many lies have been told about me or my family that have been so painful to me, that have been so painful to my family. And I and them also have had to put up with hearing those things come straight from the mouth of the district attorney. And it is so hard after going through all the years with my husband and what he did to me and believing in our system to then go through this and end up with this outcome. As you know, Your Honor, we had a first trial in this case in which I was acquitted of the first-degree murder I was charged with. I was almost acquitted of the second degree, 9 in favor of acquittal and only 3 in favor of conviction. And a lot of things besides the jury were different in the second trial. I won't go into all those now. But I do want to thank, because I've never publicly thanked some of the people that I need to thank, that I've been so grateful to. And I would like to thank all the members of my first jury for seeing the truth and seeing my suffering maybe behind my apparently sometimes aloof exterior in the courtroom. And looking at the laws and taking the time to read jury instructions and the time to listen to the videos and the audios that I brought in, the way my husband treated me, that at least there was some glimpse of what my life was like behind closed doors with him. And sorry I didn't have a nanny cam to capture some of the more vulgar, degrading things that he did to me. I was trying to take care of my 3 children, and it was a miracle that I was able to save anything. Yeah, Key, go ahead. Thank you. I am more, I think, more emotionally functional now in the utterly dysfunctional, destructive jail environment than in the explosive, abusive, sexually violent environment with my late husband. At the time of my arrest, I was so diminished from the woman I was at the time I met my husband because of his years of abuse and the toll it took on me physically, medically, mentally, and emotionally. I believe Your Honor had said something about you having to rely on the evidence and not just what one person says. And you heard on the tape, my husband used the F word many times on me, and effing B, but the full words and phrases. You heard him say things like, he didn't want to work. He didn't want to go to work. He wanted me to go to work. And yet, people try to present this picture of how much he cared about his kids. I don't dismiss that he didn't love them, but let me tell you, he put me through absolute hell. And I know maybe presently, because of things they've been put through, my children may feel differently, but I know what they saw, and thankfully I did my best to try to keep as much of it behind our bedroom door than in front of them as possible. But they, not just to me, but the yelling and screaming that he did to them, the amount that he terrorized them, having them come running, scared and crying to me about him, I know someday that they will remember that. And I don't, it's not that I want them to, but I know they will. And I want them to know how much I love them and I miss them. And I don't in any way have any blame, because people have asked me this, any blame for anything that they said in trial, because I know, at least from what I've heard, either through them or through others, what they've been through the last few years. And so I want them to know that I will always be here for them. No matter what happens to me, I love them more than anything in the world. And however hard it is for me to go on every day with having lost my babies that were my whole world to me, then I will for them, because even if they think they don't want me in their life now, someday they may have questions, and someday they deserve to be able to come to me and have answers, and to know that I will be here for them. I will write them letters someday to be given to them when they're 18. I will be there to send them letters in college or to talk to them if they want to. And it is important for me, for you to know, Your Honor, because I know you don't know all of the details of it. But in the very beginning, when this happened, the morning of the incident, you've heard the situation, you've heard the testimony, I don't need to repeat that. But the part that I do want to repeat is about my children, because it hurts so much when I hear that somehow my post-incident actions were selfish, because all I thought about when I saw that my husband was dead were my children. And, you know, in hindsight, it would have been so much better for me, or how it would have looked to the DA or to you or to the press, do have called 911 right away, but all I could think about was my babies, and I didn't want them to have the trauma and the distress of seeing their father like that. And I know it sounds so, I don't know, irrational or strange, but that's why I had covered him up, and that in the shock of the moment, and it was shock, I never intended to kill him. In the shock of the moment, all I could think about were my babies and sparing them pain, sparing them any visions that they would have for the rest of their lives, and trying to get them out of the house and try to somehow act normal for them so they wouldn't be scared until I could figure out somewhere for them to be safe while I went to the police and did whatever needed to be done with the situation. And you've heard all the things that transpired and the difficulties in making that happen, and ultimately I knew my father was the only one that would be able to take them overnight. Once had met my attorney, he was working with the police. I know there's been this misconception in the press of somehow running around, but you know, the police were informed of where I was, and they were in discussions and figuring out if they would charge or not charge, and cooperated completely with turning myself in as soon as knew that they wanted to press charges. And in that time period in between, I was taking care of my children, and I was with them and trying to make sure that my father had supplies to take care of them. And that's what my children wanted. We could have stayed or tried to stay at a hotel or something that night, but my children wanted to be with Papa. They loved my parents very much, and they spent at least one or more days or evenings every single week for almost 9 years with my parents, either going to church, going out to dinner, playing. And I am so sorry to my parents, to John and Donna, for the pain that this has caused them, because they've not only lost me, but they've lost their grandchildren. That my mother-in-law hasn't allowed them to talk to them or to see them or anything. And my parents have been so devastated by that loss and that isolation after having such close relationships with them. My children, my darling Jake and Jacqueline and Josh, Mommy wants to apologize to you guys for everything you've been through. I never thought that you would go through the suffering, and I was trying to spare you suffering from the beginning. Once I had finally decided that I had the strength to go through with filing the divorce legally in court, I did that. And in fact, the day after this happened, with the incident with my husband, I had an appointment to go back, already scheduled with the divorce attorney, to do additional documents and to do the initial filing, which was just something very small and basic, and to flesh it out more and fully, because I hadn't had time on the first time. We were just getting the filing in. But nonetheless, as I said, I know you've heard the testimony and you know what happened, but it's so frustrating to have tried to do things the legal way, to have tried for so long to keep the family together, to try to get my husband in counseling, to try to do what was right for my children. And only once I saw the effect that my husband was having on them and his effect on me was having on them did I finally have the courage to go through with that filing. And, you know, in retrospect, yes, maybe the 8 months before, when I had first considered divorce and at first considered a restraining order. I should have gone through with filing the restraining order then, but him being a teacher, I was so afraid that we would lose our only source of income at that point, and he wouldn't be employable, and my children wouldn't have that support. And had I done that, maybe if all this had still transpired, maybe none of this would have transpired, I don't know, but at least if I had, then maybe my children could have only lost one parent and not both of them. My children need to know that I was told I started to tell you that they had wanted to be and expected to be with Papa when I was to go talk to the police. My last memory of my oldest son, Jake, was when I was buckling my younger kids into their car seats in the back of my father's car, because we were told that the police wanted us to bring the children down to Children's Hospital just to be examined, just to make sure they weren't hurt, and of course they weren't. So I thought, there's no problem in that. Of course we want to cooperate and take them to be examined. And my children were expecting to get to come home that night and stay with Papa, and that's what they wanted and expected. And I was also, at that point, had been told that I would be out on bail in 2 to 5 days. And the district attorney asked for much, much higher bail than we could afford. And I ended up being 403 days in Las Colinas before I got bailed out. But I want to tell my children, especially my two oldest, Jake and Jacqueline, that I am so sorry, because I told them that I would be back in 6 days for them. And thinking that it would be 2 to 5, I put in 1 extra day for good measure, and then Mommy would be back for them. And because of the district attorney asking for such exorbitantly high bail, I wasn't. And I want them to know that I had no idea that was going to happen, and that Mommy wanted to come back to them. And that when they got to the hospital, they told Papa that he had to leave and he couldn't stay with them, and that they would call him to come pick them up. But they didn't call him, and when he called, they weren't responding to him and weren't responding to him. And the next thing we found out was that they had been taken into custody by CPS. And both of my parents were trying to get the children right away from CPS. But CPS released them to my in-laws. My children were with them. They were there for about a week. And then my in-laws brought my children back to Polinsky Center. My in-laws brought my children back after they'd had them for a week, Your Honor. And that broke my heart. I thought I wanted my parents to have my babies, but at least if they were going to give them to my in-laws, that they should have kept them. The trauma, everything I'd gone through to try to protect my children from whatever trauma I could, and to keep their situation stable in the aftermath of this, and to have that happen. And, you know, I've seen the documents, and CPS even questioned, you know, are you sure you want to do this? And they did, and my poor children ended up a whole month in Polinsky Center, you know, basically the orphanage, because my in-laws brought them back after a week. And I did get to talk to my children when they were in there. My son was adjusting because he's a smart kid, but my poor little daughter, she was 6 years old at the time, and she told me that she was being hit and slammed into tables by teenage girls there in Polinsky Center. And I thought it was a place that was trying to protect children from abuse, and here my poor little 6-year-old daughter was being hurt by teenagers in Polinsky Center. Meanwhile, my parents were still trying to get my children back the whole time, and they wouldn't release them to them, so they placed my children in a foster home when they had family that wanted them. My parents went through having their backgrounds checked. They went through getting their homes ready, baby-proofed, for all my children each to have their own room. My parents were approved. They were approved, both of them. But yet still...
Well, Ms. Harper, I'm going to interrupt for just a moment. This is your opportunity to express your views about sentencing and your feelings towards the crime, and I want to give you every opportunity to be heard. Now it appears as though you're venting about Child Protective Services, and this is not the appropriate forum for you to vent about your children in the decision process.
I'll try to wrap it up and bring it back to the case.
Well, yeah, I want to bring it back to the case because you are venting about the process. Okay, go ahead.
Bringing it back to the case, Your Honor. I found a document when the jury had gone out to deliberate, and when I was going through and cleaning up, a document from the first social worker in her raw notes where she had quoted the detective saying to her, "We have to get the kids. We don't have a confession." And that's why I bring it back to the case, Your Honor, because my poor children were made to suffer more than they needed to, and my parents, because it was all about the district attorney trying to find a way to, have my children be able to have their views changed over time and to keep them away from my parents and myself. And it's heartbreaking to me that our justice system did that. And I know that you were formerly a part of that, not on my case, so I'm sure that my understanding is you formerly served in dependency court, so you know. But I won't continue with the rest of the story for now, but you got the gist of what happened there, and I will bring it back to me and today. Your Honor, there is so much frustration at the lack of understanding what it is like to be in an abusive relationship on the part of the general public, on the part of the court system. I know in what you mentioned there earlier about the motion for reduction of the verdict. A reasonable person, that's what you said. And I can't speak for every victim of domestic violence or victim of spousal abuse, but I can speak from my own experience, which is to say that my husband completely changed me and the person that I was when I came into the marriage. I was tormented by him for years, and that torment, I believe, it did change how I thought. I was terrified of him in those last few months. It was, you hear the term walking on eggshells. I mean, it was like walking in a minefield. That's probably a much better way to put it. I heard many years ago of an experiment that they had done on monkeys and pain. I'm not sure exactly what they were testing, but it was something to the effect of red squares and blue squares. And at first, they would only feel a shock or pain on the red squares, so they'd try and stay on the blue squares to avoid the pain. But eventually, the researchers started giving them shocks on every square. And the monkeys basically started to act very different, to go berserk, to lose their mind, to be defecating on themselves, all kinds of things. And the way the abuse affected me, I mean, I don't know, it's probably going to take me years to put into words. I don't know if I'll ever recover from all of it, but I want you to understand, and I know I do, that it's hard to use the word reasonable and not bring into the fact that I was under so much abuse for so long. And a person that's not under that and not undergoing that just doesn't have an understanding of that. And it's been so devastating for me to go through. But regardless of everything I've gone through, I am so deeply sorry for the pain that it's caused my children, because I love them and always have loved them more than anything in the world. And I am so sorry for the pain that I have caused the Harper family, because I am a mother first and foremost, more than anything else. And I know, because I have lost my 3 babies, how painful that is. So I very completely empathize with their loss, and I am very sorry for that. It seems so inconceivable to me to be facing potentially 40 years to life in prison, when my husband was the one that terrorized me. He's scarred me for life. It's taken me years, and I don't know if I'll ever trust other people quite the same way. The physical pain that I went through has healed, but the emotional pain stays. There's barely a day or a night that I don't cry thinking about what I had gone through, but even more, there's not an hour of the day that I don't go through thinking about my children and how this has changed their lives, and how sorry I am for that they won't have their mother and father there. I think about how I wanted to be there for every step of the way of their lives, and it's heartbreaking to me that they won't have that. I have found a new faith in God, that things happen for a reason, and know that there will hopefully be some good come out of my suffering, that I can help others. I've already been approached by many other women who have suffered behind closed doors at the hands of their abusers, whether spouse, boyfriend, partner, whatever. And I hope that I will be able to do good and good work for them. And I hope that in some way I don't know if it'll happen today or somewhere down the line, but I hope that you can find in your heart mercy for my sentence, because as you know, a second-degree sentence in California is 15 to life, which means you can't even be considered for parole for 15 years. But in my case, my husband was 6'7", as measured by the county coroner. 6'7", 240 pounds, a big, strong, former athlete. And I was terrified. I was terrified that he was going to rape me again, hurt me, maybe even kill me with the rage that he was in. And unfortunately, one shot went off and hit him completely unexpectedly, killing him, going not in the heart, not in the head, through the torso, and you've heard the situation. And here in California, we have this, what do they call it, allegation, I guess, that adds 25 years to life. It just seems so strange to me that someone that may have premeditatively plotted to kill someone would give in a 25-year life for a first-degree murder sentence if they used a knife or poison or car or a blunt object or anything. But because there was one bullet, then it adds another 25 to life sentence, making it 40 years to life, which is not a life sentence. It is a death in prison sentence. And while it is so tragic that my husband is gone, it doesn't seem that it would serve any purpose for me to just die in prison other than a punitive one. We're supposed to be a society of rehabilitation, and we tout that, but there's nothing rehabilitative about 40 years to life and dying in prison. And it seems very unjust in this country that's supposed to be the greatest justice system in the world to get a sentence that is more than a decade longer for a first-degree offense on a second-degree offense. But most importantly, I want again to reiterate to you that whatever happens here today, I am sorry to my family for all they've been through, to the Harpers for all they've been through, and to my children. And I hope that I will have a chance to be out and live at some point in my life and make amends to my children if they want it. And I hope that, Your Honor, in this Jubilee year of Pope Francis, the year of mercy, as he calls it in the Catholic Church, I hope that you will find mercy in your heart to find a way, whether it's through a judgment reduction or I don't know what the options are available to you. I'm not familiar with them all. But to find some way to grant mercy here today. And I want to thank everyone, Your Honor, for your time, for hearing this case, and the court workers that have spent all of their time and been so compassionate and kind. And I want to thank not just my family and friends, but I also want to thank all of the strangers that have reached out and shared their experiences, especially those women that have reached out to me that have had or presently have intimate partner abuse happening in their lives, and let them know that I understand, even if other people don't understand what happens behind closed doors. Your Honor, thank you. God bless you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Finks, anything further?
Yes, just, Your Honor, Ms. Harper asked me to ask the court whether it could make a recommendation to the Department of Corrections that she be housed as locally as possible in Southern California so that her parents would have an opportunity to visit her. As the court knows, they're somewhat advanced in age, and she would like to be able to have that future contact with her parents. And certainly Ms. Harper is aware that the court has limited discretion with respect to the 25-year enhancement in this case. It comes with the territory, and her position that it seems irrational that her sentence would be greater than a first-degree premeditated murder because of the weapon is one shared by a number of people, not just Ms. Harper, but there's little the court can do about that. The legislature has spoken about that. However, it does seem, for purposes of due process, for purposes of cruel and unjust punishment, that the anomalous sentence of a second-degree murder with a gun being greater than a first-degree premeditated killing in the state of California seems to be, in this case would seem to be a situation that argues that it does not make good sense, and it does violate cruel and unjust punishment prohibitions of the Constitution. But that's something, of course, that is in the purview of the appellate courts. Just want to bring that to the court's attention, that her position with respect to that is not one that's a sole voice in the wilderness. A lot of people have wondered about that.
Okay. All right, thank you. And I understand, Ms. Harper, that you feel that a 40-year to life sentence is unfair given the fact that a premeditated deliberate murder could end up with a sentence of 25 to life, and you're facing much more. But you have to understand that your husband got a death sentence. Your husband's never coming back. All right. Unfortunately, the court does not have the ability to fashion a sentence that would bring Mr. Harper back to life. If I could, I would, and that's what certainly the Harper family would like. That's what your kids would like. And as Lina Harper testified at trial when she first got news that the police were at your house and the medical examiner's van was there, she testified that her initial thought was, well, gosh, this is so final. It's just so final. And it's final because Jason can't be brought back. And based on the evidence I heard at trial, Jason was a good man. He was a loving son. He was a loving brother. He was a tremendous hands-on father, a fantastic high school teacher and coach who, as Lina Harper said, was dedicated to the success of his students. Less importantly, but compelling, was he was a great neighbor. He was, as they said, the neighborhood mascot. Your house was the focal point of the neighborhood, not because of you, but because of Jason, who was always in the front yard playing with the kids. All the kids and neighbors would come over and congregate in your driveway and hang out with Jason, go surfing with him. It sounds undoubtedly he's missed by many, and tragically your selfless actions have left 3 children without a mother, without a father, because you're going to spend, as you said, the rest of your life in prison, and Jason was murdered. You know, covered him up with debris and trash and blankets and went about your day trying to cover up your tracks while he laid there on the floor dying. And, you know, I was moved by the letters that were written by the children where Jackie says, "We will never feel the same or be the same because you killed our father. You have made my brothers and me orphans. My brothers and I loved our dad so much, and you stole that from us. We were never able to say goodbye to him." And that, you know, you say you're sorry for the actions and so forth, but the impact that it's had on your children, these kids are great kids. I sat here and listened to them testify. Jake said, "She murdered with no sense of the consequences of leaving my siblings and I parentless. She has destroyed our lives." And thankfully, Lina and Homer Harper have been able to raise them and instill the values that they feel are important, the same values they presumably instilled in Jason. But I mean, let's keep in mind, Lina's 74, Homer's I think 83 or 84, and here they are raising 3 kids. These 2 people are saints, and thankfully they are present in their lives to ensure that they're brought up in a good home, knowing that they are loved. I don't think it's in their script that they had for their life, being in their 70s and 80s, raising 3 young children, which comes with many challenges, but thankfully they are here to raise them. But rather than go through a painful divorce process, you took the easy way out. You shot him, and presumably you were aware that you were going to keep the money, keep the house, thinking maybe you were going to keep the kids. But your actions have affected so many people in so many ways, including your own family. Your father's a devoted father, and your father did what a lot of fathers would do, and take care of their daughter, and you know, you've affected his life too. You know, you've put him through a lot. So your actions just have had so many far-reaching consequences. I'm not sure you fully appreciate it, but that's not a consideration for the court. This shooting, in the opinion of the court and in the opinion of the jurors, was no accident. And the legislature, for whatever reason, places a high punishment on those who use guns. And in this case, it was a gun, as I pointed out before, that was loaded. The safety was off. Your finger was on the trigger. It was pointed at Jason Harper. You pulled the trigger, and you killed him, just days after filing for divorce. You are no doubt a danger to society in the opinion of the court, and you are sentenced to 40 years to life in prison for the killing of Jason Harper. The defendant is absolutely ineligible for a grant of probation pursuant to Penal Code Section 12022.53G. Therefore, probation is denied, and the defendant will be committed to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation for the term of 40 years to life. That is 15 years to life for the Penal Code Section 187A conviction, the 10-year term for the PC 12022.5A allegation is stayed pursuant to Penal Code Section 12022.53F. And with respect to the Penal Code Section 12022.53D allegation, the court imposed a term of 25 years to life for that allegation, for a total term of 40 years to life in state prison. Do we have, and from probation, quit your appearance for probation. I failed to get that.
Good morning, Your Honor. I'm Mayra Espino on behalf of probation.
Okay, and do you have updated credits?
Yes, we do.
Okay, all right. The defendant's committed to the term of California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation for the period of 40 years to life, with credit for time served to this date is 503 actual days credit. The court will order the defendant to pay a restitution fine pursuant to Penal Code Section 1202.4b in the amount of $10,000.
Your Honor, I think you reserved that for hearing.
That's the restitution fine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so, and the additional restitution fine pursuant to Penal Code Section 1202.45 in the amount of $10,000 to be stayed and remain so unless defendant's supervision is revoked. The court will order the defendant to pay a $40 court security fee, the $30 immediate critical needs account fee, and the criminal justice administration fee in the amount of $154. Restitution will be left open and to be determined at the hearing on January 22nd at 9 o'clock. All fines, fees, and restitution, if the court does order it, shall be paid forthwith or as provided in Penal Code Section 2085.5. The court will order the defendant to submit to DNA testing pursuant to Penal Code Section 296. Now, Ms. Harper, you do have the right to appeal the conviction and the sentence of the court. You have 60 days to file your notice of appeal. That is your responsibility to do so, but you must file your appeal notice within 60 days of today's date or the appeal will be untimely. Mr. Finks, were you going to file that on her behalf? Or?
Yes, Your Honor. I just asked that she be allowed to sign her notice of appeal just for a second before she goes back so I can file it today.
All right, before she leaves, we'll allow her to sign that document, perhaps back in the tank. I'm not sure. I'll leave that up to the bailiff. But are there any further requests at this time, Mr. Finks?
The recommendation.
Oh, the recommendation. Ms. Harper, I don't have the ability to dictate where you're housed. You will be classified by the California Department of Corrections, and then they will place you in a facility that is appropriate for your classification. So I cannot make that recommendation. I can't make a binding order that they house you further south. If I could, I would, because I know your father is probably going to be driving up to see you quite a bit. But they will not order that. All right, or they will not follow the court order. Now, there's also a temporary criminal protective order that was in place for Lina Harper. I'm just going to lift that because she's going to be in custody. So that temporary criminal protective order is hereby released. Anything further than Mr. Finks?
There you go.
Mr. Watt, have anything further?
No, thank you.
All right, then we'll see everybody back here on January 22nd at 9 o'clock in the morning right here in this department for the restitution hearing. All right, thank you. We are in recess. Then Mr. and Mrs. Harper, can you just please remain and we'll get the passports for you? Okay, those take a second. Okay, thank you.
We can go down the hall. You want to do that? You want to get a seat? Okay. Yeah, same place.
Okay, all set?
Or Jack. Sure. I have to, yeah. I understand. Yeah. Do you want to read it right now, or do you want the action?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
Are they screaming at me upstairs yet?
Jurors? Sorry.
Don't. Have they been yelling at me upstairs yet?
I've had one call. I told him he'd be there probably by 11, which I'm right on time.